there are so many strategies to achieving what I would consider to be the 3 principles for fat loss. Someone either needs to practice dietary restriction, they need to practice caloric restriction, or there needs to be time restriction. So intermittent fasting falls in that time restriction. When you give yourself a smaller window in which to eat, you actually consume far fewer calories. So if I give someone 16 hours of their 24-hour day, assuming they're sleeping for 8 hours, and by all means, people will often eat from sun up until sundown. So it's no stretch to say that some people eat 16 hours in a day. But if you whittle that window down to 8 hours, which some intermittent programs do, they get you on the 16-8, you can't eat nearly as many calories in 8 hours as you can 16. I don't care if you try to gorge yourself on the same types of foods that you eat in 16 hours. You may in 16 hours not ever feel satisfied or full. You will still consume more calories in that window than if you bared down and plowed through just 2 meals, maybe even 3 meals in a smaller window. So if you restrict your time, you end up restricting the amount of calories that you're consuming. In terms of dietary restriction, this is why programs like paleo or the carnivore, or using the example of a low carb, even a more general low carb diet. If you remove entire food groups, so that being your dietary restriction, you're going to eat fewer calories. Particularly if someone's eating a lot of processed, sugary carbohydrates, a lot of processed, unhealthy fats. Like if you remove those, I use this term loosely, but those food groups, and you restrict yourself to veggies and lean meats and healthier options in terms of fat and more complex carbohydrates, you are going to eat far fewer calories because you've just removed so many foods. Foods that are typically easily accessible, you run through fast food. Those foods typically are processed, they're refined, they're sugary, they're hyper palatable, they're made to taste good, they can hold a lot of calories. Or foods that we like to keep in our pantry in terms of chips, in terms of cookies, foods we keep in our freezer, in terms of ice cream. So those foods, again, when you remove those, you don't give yourself an option to eat those things, again, all of a sudden, you're eating fewer calories. So then the last, being caloric restriction, is simply where you say to yourself, I'm allowed only as many calories as this. So it may be that I'm on this 1,200 calorie diet, okay? A lot of times people don't even concern themselves with the quality of food they're eating. They're only concerned with the quantities. One thing I do coach for sure is make the foods you eat earn their rent. We want them to be quality. I'm not so interested in even the total number of calories that are in these things. Calories count, but I don't count calories. Again, though, going back to this, I'm only going to restrict myself to 1,200 calories. You're absolutely going to lose weight if your caloric needs are more than that. So again, those are the 3 ways ultimately that people can bring it down. Again, there's so many strategies to achieving that. Through exercise, through even your activities of daily living, through the food you're eating. So bringing that down. So timing can matter, but in the same time, it may not. Certainly the quality of foods you're eating, to me, matter, but in a way, quantity, or in terms of the amount of calories you're eating, actually matter as well. So it's one of those, no one way is necessarily, certainly not the only way, because there are many roads that lead to Rome. So it's one of those finding what it is for you, and I keep coming back to personal preference, finding what it is that works for you. So is it I'm going to restrict certain foods? Is it I'm going to restrict the window in which I'm eating? Or am I going to restrict the amount of calories that I'm consuming